Before the air war lit up Iraqi radar screens and before armored columns crossed into Kuwait, Desert Storm revealed a quieter crisis that nearly crippled United States forces. Modern small arms, meticulously engineered for European battlefields, were seizing up in desert conditions they were never designed to endure. Fine talcum-like sand infiltrated everything. Temperatures thinned standard lubricants into useless film. Weapons that functioned flawlessly during stateside training began choking after a single patrol. Soldiers did not wait for permission. They improvised, adapted, and kept themselves alive with substances never intended for firearms. What follows is not folklore or barracks myth. These lubricants were used because standard military solutions failed, and the men carrying rifles had no margin for error. Dry graphite powder became a survival choice when oil turned into sand glue. Graphite powder was never approved for small arms lubrication, yet it found its way into bolts and trigger assemblies across the theater. Traditional oil attracted sand, forming an abrasive paste that accelerated wear and caused stoppages. Graphite offered something radical in that environment: lubrication without wetness. It bonded to metal surfaces and reduced friction without trapping debris. Soldiers scavenged it from vehicle maintenance kits and industrial supplies. The lesson here is not about copying the practice blindly, but about understanding environmental compatibility. In ultra-dry, particulate-heavy conditions, reducing adhesion matters more than maximizing slickness. Hydraulic fluid quietly replaced gun oil in armored units. Hydraulic fluid, especially those military-spec variants, was, pretty abundant in armored divisions and designed to stay stable even across extreme temperatures. When rifle bolts froze up or cycling got sluggish, some crews would use just a trace amount of hydraulic fluid to get things working again. It resisted evaporation better than gun oil and could handle heat spikes without breaking down. The real danger, though, was overuse, which could damage seals over time, but honestly, in combat, the immediate goal was just reliability. Diesel fuel was used sparingly when nothing else was available. Diesel fuel was never ideal, but, well, it was everywhere. In emergencies, soldiers would clean carbon fouling and lightly treat metal surfaces with diesel to prevent corrosion and restore basic movement. Its lubricating qualities were minimal, but its solvent action removed sand oil sludge effectively. The key was restraint. Excess diesel attracted grime and evaporated quickly. Historically, this mirrors earlier wars where kerosene and lamp oil were used similarly. Automatic transmission fluid surprised troops with its stability. ATF was engineered to operate under heat, friction, and contamination, making it unexpectedly useful. Some soldiers used minute amounts on moving metal interfaces where standard oil failed. ATF contained detergents that reduced buildup and maintained viscosity longer than gun oil in desert heat. This was not widespread, but it was effective enough to be quietly tolerated. From a historical standpoint, this highlights how civilian industrial fluids often surpass military consumables when pushed outside doctrine. Silicone spray reduced friction without holding sand. Silicone spray, which you can usually find in vehicle maintenance supplies, offered a semi-dry lubricating layer that resisted dust adhesion. Soldiers applied it lightly to external moving parts where sand intrusion was just unavoidable. It did not replace oil internally, but it prevented surface binding and corrosion. The broader insight here is, well, layered protection. Grease was intentionally avoided but sometimes diluted for specific parts. Heavy grease was disastrous in fine sand, yet diluted grease mixtures were occasionally used on specific wear points where metal-on-metal contact caused galling. By thinning grease with available solvents, soldiers created temporary compounds that stayed in place longer than oil but trapped less debris. This was risky and situational, but it worked when nothing else did. The historical relevance lies in necessity driving chemistry at the individual level. Spit and water were used briefly during emergencies, and that really matters. The least discussed lubricant was also, honestly, the most primitive. In momentary emergencies, moisture from spit or water could temporarily reduce friction in seized parts just long enough to cycle a weapon. This was not sustainable and often caused corrosion later, but it restored function when seconds mattered most. This is not romantic ingenuity. It is, plain and simple, desperation. The lesson here is brutal but honest. Temporary solutions buy time, and time, well, time saves lives. After Desert Storm, weapons lubrication standards changed quietly. Dry lubricants, improved oils, and better training started to emerge, but only after soldiers proved doctrine wrong under fire. These unconventional lubricants were never celebrated because they really highlighted institutional blind spots. History, more often than not, advances not through design committees, but through men solving problems with whatever they have on hand. For serious historians and survivalists, this topic isn't about copying battlefield improvisation blindly. It's about understanding why systems fail and how adaptability bridges the gap between planning and reality. If this kind of overlooked military history matters to you, go ahead and subscribe to Strange History, share this episode with others who value hard truths over polished narratives, and help keep these lessons alive.